At the beginning of the film, we will be shown a king with several of his troops, who are chasing and hunting a dragon. And when they arrive at a cave, the dragon suddenly appeared and slaughtered all the troops.
For the light!
Knowing that his position had been cornered, the king surrendered and prostrated himself before the dragon. Hundreds of years later, in a faraway country, we will be introduced to a princess named Elodie and her sister named Floria. They are princesses from a kingdom in that country and live with their father and stepmother, because indeed, their biological mother died a long time ago due to an illness. In extreme cold weather conditions, the people at Elodie's work lack water and food supplies. That's why Elodie thought of helping to collect some firewood that could be used by her people. Not long afterward, they saw a foreign train coming to their country. The train came from the Araya kingdom. Even though at first Elodie refused, but her father convinced her. With a fleet of ships and horse-drawn carriages full of gold, the prince would definitely make Elodie happy, and that was certain. All of this will also change and improve the welfare of their people in the future.
Your people need you. This is who we are.
In the end, Elodie accepted the match and left for Araya's work. On their way to enter the work area, they passed through black fog and were greeted by two giant dragon statues, even though at first he was nervous. But the feeling changed when I passed through the fog. The situation is 180 degrees different from the country he has lived in all this time. The Araya kingdom is a very fertile and rich country, and this can be seen from the abundance of plants and abundant natural resources. After that, they were greeted by the royal treasurer who would take them to the room that had been prepared.
My ladies, if you will follow me.
Elodie and her family couldn't stop being amazed by the situation, and still couldn't believe it, that she would become a princess and live in the Araya kingdom. Then the treasurer said, that when dawn comes, Elodie will be taken to meet her future husband, Prince Henry. Nervousness and happiness were clearly visible on Elodie's face, because in a very short time, her situation could change 180 degrees, and when she was on the balcony of her room, she saw a woman across from her room and staring at each other, but not long after, the woman came back in. When night fell, Elodie's nervousness returned. She then tried to calm herself on the balcony, and when she came out, the woman's room she saw earlier was very dark. It wasn't quite there. She also saw there is a torchlight from a distant mountain. The next day, Elodie finally met her future husband, Prince Henry. Her anxiety seemed to have disappeared after seeing Henry. Without even hesitation, she asked Henry to go on a date without being watched by his bodyguards. Here. Henry also seemed interested in Elodie after seeing her riding a horse. On the other hand, after discussing the marriage of their two sons and daughters, Elodie's father looked like he couldn't believe what he had just heard, even though his wife knew about the odd thing, but he still covered it up and said, that it was all will be alright. Long story short, the day before the wedding started, the stepmother who felt something was wrong tried to convince Elodie that this marriage was a big mistake and asked Elodie to think about it again before it was too late. But suddenly,
am I interrupting something?
Her father comes and stops their conversation. The next day, the day when Elodie and Henry's wedding finally began. Elodie's happiness and dreams seemed to have come true in a very short time, and now, Elodie has been crowned as the princess of the Araya kingdom.
Princess of Orient.
But that happiness didn't last long. After the wedding was over, not even the first night, Henry and Elodie went on a trip somewhere, and it turned out, they were headed to a mountain that Elodie had seen before, and Henry says that they will perform a second ancient ceremony to honor their ancestors on the mountain. Elodie, without suspicion, followed her husband's orders, but when they got there, the situation looked very strange. Queen Araya was wearing a red robe followed by the royal nobles who were wearing the same masks. In that situation, Queen Oria then gave a coin and told about the history of the birth of the Araya kingdom. When their ancestors first occupied the island, It turned out that there was the last wild creature of its kind, who had lived before. The creature then attacked the residents and destroyed the village. The king then ordered his troops to fight and kill the creature, but unfortunately, their resistance was not enough to defeat the creature. Until in the end, the creature made an offer to the king. He was willing to share the island with the villagers, if the king was willing to sacrifice his 3 daughters. Even though the king loved his daughters very much, the responsibility and obligation to his people was very great, until finally the king sacrificed his 3 daughters to this creature, and a kingdom of Aurea was born. After that, Queen Aurea carried out the next sacred session by wounding the palms of Henry and Eliody's hands. This was done to unite the blood of the 2 people, by uniting their blood. Eliody has now officially become a nobleman. Princess Aurea. Dothan is the closing of the ceremony. Eliody was asked to throw his coin into the abyss. And when the ceremony was finished, Henry then carried Elodie back to the train. But suddenly,
Close your eyes.
Elodie was thrown into a ravine by Henry. After waking up, Elodie, who still couldn't believe what had happened, felt very angry. She then tried to go back upstairs but in vain. After she saw several coins and other necklaces, she realized that he is not the first victim of the Aurea kingdom. And not long after, he saw a light in the cave. When he went inside, many birds were burning in the room, and suddenly, a talking dragon appeared in front of Elodie, with all the strange things he experienced. Elodie also dared herself to ask the dragon what he wanted, and in fact, the session of uniting blood between Henry and Elodie was a ploy by the Aurea kingdom to trick the dragon. Because in their agreement, every generation of the Aurea kingdom will sacrifice 3 noble daughters as sacrifices to the dragon, and with that small wound, Elodie's body now smells like royalty to the dragon. Knowing that fact, Elodie tried hard to save herself. In her escape, the woman she saw before turned out to be a corpse in the cave. In other words, the torch she saw that night is the ceremony of Henry's first wife who will be sacrificed to the dragon. With great difficulty, Lodi tried to enter the cave passage and was able to hide from the dragon's reach. In a state of injury and frustration, Lodi continued to walk through the passages. She also felt that her father had also used her for his own interests. To find a way out, Elodie then dared to jump over the ravine, and after succeeding, she saw that there was a lot of blue light in the passage. It turned out, the light was produced from tenacious feathers nesting in the cave. Knowing this, Elodie then used the caterpillar as a lamp, but suddenly, the dragon managed to find Elodie, but quickly. Elodie managed to hide in another hallway. In that condition the dragon said, "You hide in the same place as the others. Dothan will find the same end too. In fact, the passage is the safest place from the dragon's reach." There are also many names of other daughters from previous generations who wrote their names on a stone in the hallway. Elodie decided to rest, but when she woke up, the lampworm suddenly stuck to her injured leg. It turns out, the caterpillar could heal all of Elodie's wounds, and her condition had improved. Elodie then found a map of the exit route engraved on the wall. By relying on his memory, he again finds his enthusiasm to survive. As expected, the map led him to a light from the sun that was pointing out. There was also a crown that said V, which indicated that Victoria was the one who had made it this far and managed to survive, with the struggle to survive. Elodie then climbed up and passed the crystal stone, but apparently, the dragon was waiting for her to fall and was ready to eat her. Luckily, he managed to grab a crystal and reach his destination. But unlucky, the place he was going was just another very high mountain tunnel. And suddenly, the dragon appeared and said that there is no way out for anyone, and when Elodie looks at the other side, he finds the words, "No place is safe for anyone," and also a Victoria skull. Knowing that fact, Elodie resigned herself to her situation, and when the dragon was about to let out a breath, there was a voice calling to Elodie from inside the cave. The dragon quickly rushed over to where the sound came from. And it turns out, Elodie's father and some of his troops intended to save Elodie. Without them realizing it, their voices had provoked the dragon to kill them. On the other hand, Elodie, who knew that it was her father's voice, rushed over to him, but in the middle of her journey, she found 3 baby dragon corpses still in eggshells. In fact, the tragedy started with the actions of the king that we saw at the beginning of the scene. He and some of his troops had killed 3 female dragon babies that had just hatched. That's why, the dragon made a pact with the king. In exchange for the life and descendants of the king, in every generation they have to sacrifice 3 daughters of the king's descendants as sacrifices. And if that is not done, it will burn the Aurea kingdom and all the bloodlines of that king to ashes. On the other hand, when the father and his 2 troops were looking for Elodie, the dragon suddenly came to attack them, because there was a bit of drama, so let's just keep it short. Elodie, who was still hiding, accidentally made a sound when his father was about to die. Hearing that, the dragon was looking for him. Fortunately, the dragon was distracted by the sound of the footsteps of the guide trying to escape. When the dragon left, Elodie then approached her father. Her father then asked Elodie to immediately go using the entrance rope, because until now Floria and her stepmother were still waiting for her on the ship. And at the last moment, the father apologizes to his daughter.
Forgive me.
Using her time, Elodie rushed up the rope, but on the other hand, the dragon, who realized this, immediately chased her. Luckily, Elodie managed to get out and escape from that place, knowing that she was still within reach of the dragon. Elodie then lured the dragon with her horse, while she herself hid in a rock. Felt that he had lost track, the dragon became angry and breathed fire into the sky. The nobles who saw it thought that Elodie had managed to escape quickly. Queen Aurea then asked her troops to win Floria, who was on the ship, as Elodie's replacement. Even though Henry forbade his mother to unite her blood with Floria's, but that didn't stop Queen Aurea, who had the ambition to protect her kingdom at all costs. She injured her own hand and united her blood with Floria's. On the other hand, Elodie, who felt that she was safe, suddenly saw her injured stepmother, after hearing that Floria had been kidnapped to replace her. Elodie rushed to the ceremony venue. But unfortunately, Floria has now been taken by the dragon, with her experience and preparation of her new hair. Elodie goes back down the cave hall and makes a trap to lure the dragon out. And when the dragon was provoked, Elodie, who turned out to be waiting at the dragon's place, took advantage of the situation to take Floria away, but because Floria was injured, Elodie asked Floria to hide, while he alone will come face to face with the dragon. In that situation, Elodie tries to convince the dragon that she and all the princesses sacrificed in the cave are not of noble birth, but the dragon doesn't just believe that and says that until the end of his life, he will kill all the daughters of girls of noble descent, because indeed, the 3 baby dragon girls who were killed by the king are the last descendants of the dragon, and suddenly the dragon breathed out fire, causing Elodie to be thrown into the lake and seriously injured. And when he tried to take his sword back, the dragon quickly caught him, but in his desperate situation, Elodie managed to put up resistance. After that short fight, Elodie saw the reflection of dust from the concave wall right in front of her, and she thought, to make it a weapon against the dragon, by provoking the dragon's anger. Elodie asked the dragon to burn her at that moment. And it hurt the dragon with its own fire breath. With the situation now turning around, Elodie then shows the wound on her palm and says that all the women who have been victims in this cave have the same wound, because indeed, the nobles had tricked the dragon with the scent of their blood which had been mixed through the wound. Hearing that, the dragon who was helpless asked Elodie to kill him, but he didn't do that. Elodie then took some blue caterpillars to heal the dragon's wounds. After that, Elodie was now seen coming to Henry's third wedding. She then asked Henry's future third wife and everyone there to leave the palace while they had the chance, and not long after, the dragon come and destroy the kingdom and its contents. With the gold supplies she has obtained, Elodie, who is now friends with the dragon, will return to her home to be able to improve and prosper her people. And the film ends.